We're going to be talking about a topic near and dear to my heart, which is NextGen SOC. So, we'll get right into this. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? And what I'm laying out here is really the playing field that we're having to manage as security professionals these days. So what we're finding is, number one, we all have extremely complex environments, right? We hope you're using Azure, but we realize it might be Azure plus Amazon plus some other cloud service, and that's going to be SaaS, infrastructure as a service, PaaS. You might have a private cloud, and then you have these large networks and environments that you're trying to deal with. The other thing that we're obviously finding is that the velocity of attacks or the speed of attacks continues to increase. And the way that I've always looked at that is the typical kill chain that we see these days. We know that emails are, no matter how much you train your users, no matter how much hard work you do, you're typically going to have someone that clicks, installs, or does the wrong thing. And that speed at which that happens is very fast. The other piece that we see from our incident response and internally at Microsoft as we're defending our environment is that oftentimes attackers can go from that first click to a complete domain admin compromise within typically 24 hours or less in many cases. So the speed is extremely difficult. And then the other issue that we're dealing with is just the volume, right? The volume of new vulnerabilities, the volume of patches that have to be rolled out, and honestly, we just can't keep up. So that's the environment that we're dealing with. In my belief, and what we'll talk to you today about, is that the only way I think you can really do that is start using automation and orchestration, embed it within your security operations teams. And that's kind of what we're talking about, and why we entered into a relationship with Ernst & Young to really drive home and help customers do what we're doing internally in our SOC at Microsoft, right? We're defending the Azure fabric, 1.5 million servers, billions of attacks against our machines every day. But to take what we're doing there in our orchestration automation and partner with EY to then drive that to our customers. So a few other slides here that I just wanted to talk about. Former CISO, I've been there and tried to manage this, and I came up with the idea of the CISO coefficient. So you have return on investment, which is obviously trying to reduce risk in your environment for the least amount of cost. Now the things that CISOs are trying to deal with now, and that they're getting pressure from their board and their chief digital officers, is around driving efficiency into their operations and then also not disrupting the business. I've never seen a quicker path to finding a new job as a CISO than significantly disrupting the business. And so when we think about how we want to proceed, we're starting to look at Microsoft in terms of assume breach. And you hear that a lot, but we've really focused our efforts in being able to identify and respond and contain an attack within minutes, where in the past I think we've seen the trend to be days. And so we kind of use this coefficient as we decide what to implement, where to invest. So for us, we've significantly invested. We'll cut in many areas, but in terms of data analytics, automation, and orchestration internally, that's where our budget is growing and increasing because we're having significant success in disrupting attackers. Now, when we talk about ROI and what we're doing there, we also look at the disruption of the defender. And so there are a few key things. So we say we want to ruin the attacker's ROI because most attackers today, they also have timelines that they have to meet. You obviously have the persistent attacks, those that want to come after you as a company, but we want to disrupt it and make it as difficult as possible, so hopefully they'll make a mistake and we'll be able to detect them easier. And we also know that there are attackers that are opportunistic, right? I mean, based on our attribution and our intelligence that we gather, we know that there are attackers that will go after the easiest target. So a key goal as we do our investments and as we're building out our SOC is to make it as difficult as possible for them to get into us, and hopefully they'll move on to someone that's easier. And that's our idea behind calculating that return on investment. We also know that there's very little that we can typically do in terms of once the data gets out and the monetization. That's really a law enforcement effort. We'll work with law enforcement. We work very heavily with law enforcement to disrupt it. But again, it's very difficult for us as Microsoft to do that. So our focus is actually on disrupting the early stages of the attack. Now, as we're also building out services at Microsoft, I'm not going to go in this in a lot of detail, but we do like to think about the kill chain. And at Microsoft, we eat our own dog food, right? We use our own tools and products to secure our environment. And so one of the things that we do is we do our threat modeling. In fact, a lot of our new products and capabilities that we build and take to market are those that we use internally to protect Azure, to protect our corporate network. So as you can see here, what we do is we typically map what technologies are we using to disrupt what stages of the kill chain. And we have a couple of scenarios, and I'm just going to go ahead and play this slide out for the sake of time. But you have the typical email that goes into the environment. Someone clicks on the link, provides them credentials. Once that happens, the attacker then wants to dump additional credentials that are stored on that Windows machine. They then continually, what we say, move up the tiered environment, and their end goal is to get to that domain admin account. So we spend a lot of time at Microsoft in terms of defending those domain admin users. But as you can see here, we have our advanced threat protection that does your sandboxing, your URL protection, so that's that disruption. Within Windows 10, we have device guard, credential guard to protect credentials. So when the attacker tries to run Mimikatz or Windows Credential Editor, guess what? The LSAS is protected. They can't get to it. They can't dump those credentials, so it stops that attack. We embed some of our managed services to detect and respond. And then as we kind of move into the credential side even more, we get into advanced threat analytics. So that's where we do machine learning to understand that this user typically accesses this tenant Monday through Friday during normal business hours. Now, if that user suddenly tries to access their account on Saturday and from an IP address that's not typical, we want to know about that as a security team, and we want to be able to respond and alert on that. So that's where we focus on that part of the kill chain. And then as you go down to the other scenarios, we start talking about device management, mobile device management, mobile application management. But in all of these cases, we mapped all of our technologies across the entire kill chain and then ensure that they're all integrated together so that we have that data so that we can work on it and detect and respond quickly. And the other thing that I would just point out, I mean, it's really beyond this conversation, but we're trying to build an integrated fabric where all of that data is shared across all of our products and services. And what our focus is, and how we're doing that, is something we call the Intelligent Security Graph. Has anyone heard of the Microsoft Intelligent Security Graph? No, sort of. So I'll give you the idea of what that is. So as you can imagine, we have 1 billion Windows users across the world. Those users are typically, I don't want to say typically, but commonly attacked. And we're getting all of that telemetry and information. All of those products that I showed in the previous slide, we're collecting petabytes of data about security attackers, right? We're having attribution services so we can tie that to what threat groups. We know how they're modeling their attacks so we can integrate the defenses in the right manner. So with all of that data, we've built a graph that allows us to do the normalization of that data across all of our products. It does aggregation work, and then we run analytics on top of that, and we've created this API that all of our product teams at Microsoft use. So whether you're a Windows Active Directory user, Windows Defender ATP, you get access just as part of your use of our technology of all of this threat intelligence that we're using and building into the products. Now, I will say there are always humans, right? And this goes to our partnership with EY and also within our internal folks, that you have to have those humans that analyze the data and then drive that information back into to understand and to correlate and to aggregate. Now, I'll give you an example. That sounds really good, but I wanted to give you just one real-life example of how we kind of make sense of that. How many people have heard of the sticky keys backdoor? Anyone heard of that? So very common backdoor that's used still today, and a lot of people would say, oh, it's a vulnerability in Windows. It's actually not. So I serve in the military, and one of the things I like is that we're very supportive of military folks. But let's say you have someone that comes back from combat and they have a lost limb. How do you log in to a Windows machine? Control, Alt, Delete, right? And so how do you do that if someone is missing a limb? So the accessibility services that we have built in is that you can program those so that if you hit Shift 5 times, they'll either get a login screen or whatever the case they need to log into the machine. Now, the attackers are brilliant. What they figured out is Guess what? If we replace that accessibility binary with PowerShell.exe or command.exe, guess what happens if that attacker can remotely then hit Shift 5 times? Instead of getting the logon prompt, they're going to get a system-level command shell. So that's a very common backdoor that we find still today. Now, how do we detect that across all of our Azure VMs that are running on our 1.5 million servers? So we use analytics in the intelligent security graph, and this is one example where we know what the pattern is that we're looking for. So this is just one way that they do this, but they usually use a registry change to, instead of point to the logon prompt, they'll then point to one of these accessibility utilities. So it'll be utilman.exe, osk.exe, magnify.exe, this suite of accessibility tools. So what we know that is the indicator that there's some type of attack going on. And in this case, we run that across all of those VMs and all of the logs that we're getting, and we realize, guess what? We see that there were some registry key changes that were attempted that match this signature. We go a little bit deeper and we say, well, we want to know how many people actually attempted to log into those accounts where that registry key change was made. And in this case, we see that there were 2 attempts to log in to do different VMs on 2 different tenants in our Azure infrastructure. And then we say, well, we want to know the geo-IP location of where those login attempts went. Well, then we run that and we find out, okay, they came from the Republic of Iran. So if you do business there, that's great. You might have a need for someone to log into your VM. But in most cases, this is a pretty high indicator for us that there's some type of issue. Now, the great news is once we have that, we have a finished analytic that we run constantly and feed into our intelligent security graph, and then have the ability to really detect at what we're trying to get to is real-time speed across Azure. So that's what we're doing with the intelligent security graph. And this is just a real quick high architecture of what that looks like for us, our products, our tools, and our SOC. And again, our focus to make this happen is to use all of that data in the graph and to drive it into our products and services. And then our SOC fits in the top of this, where we continually use that data to defend our Azure infrastructure and our customers. So with that, I'm going to now turn it over to Chad to talk about all the great stuff that they're doing to help make this possible for you and your environment.
Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, again, my name is Chad Holmes. I am formerly the CTO at FireEye. I'm also the CTO now at EY. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit is kind of some of everything that Jonathan just laid out and talked about. We at EY, we have a very large cybersecurity practice, global, multinational, and we interact with a lot of different product technology vendors. But one of the core elements that we do of providing innovation to our clients is really leveraging unique tools, tool sets, and tooling that Microsoft also provides. If it's moving organizations from a digitization to the cloud or mobile or IoT, we help them instrument some of those components and wrap managed services and some of the other elements around it. So I won't go, there's a lot of content on these slides, so I won't go through all different aspects of it, but one thing I wanted to kind of bring up that people don't really know is the capabilities that we have at EY. We have thousands of people globally dedicated on cybersecurity, but we also focus on incident response, security operations, security monitoring, threat intelligence. We have a very large threat intelligence team that kind of helps work with our alliance partners with their ecosystem of intelligence and our data scientists, and how do we get more visibility through that process. So this is just one quick little slide talking about some of our services, but we do have over 180 different unique offerings that we work with clients on. So it's across a whole different fabric of different use cases. But a lot of it nowadays, like as organizations are moving to these digital environments, they have to build the playbooks, operational manuals, and how do you orchestrate and automate some of those digital playbooks. So we work with clients to kind of take those playbooks, build those processes, and then digitize those into some kind of orchestration technology. Because as everybody knows, and Jonathan leaded into it a little bit, is it's all about getting that mean time to detection, that mean time to response down. They still have to respond to it. And a lot of the clients we work with, they have 70 to 100 different security technologies, most of the guys on this floor, and majority of the times they don't talk to each other. So how do they get that detection, that response time if their technologies don't even work together? So we kind of work with them, automate the process, the playbooks, and kind of go through that life cycle, right? How do they find and anonymize and figure out those threats? So we have massive teams around that, and how do we build it into some kind of fusion center concept, right? You can't just, from a security operations perspective, yes, you can have your security ops, you got to build efficiencies, but it's always the threat intelligence, the analytics piece of it. But what do you fundamentally run into is acquisition of the data. Do I ask the right questions? How do I know which questions to ask my data to be able to get that right response, right? Then how do I orchestrate that environment outward, right? So active defense, really hunting exercises to kind of go through this process of securing and being able to, the next generation of security operations, right? So this kind of talks about a little bit of a roadmap, normally how we talk with our clients about the people, the service delivery, and the technology. Technology is a really core set of what we do. We partner with strategic technology vendors like Microsoft to really, how do we help clients to kind of solve those big problems, right? And through that whole ecosystem of cloud, mobile application, IoT, whatever it is, in today's age, we have some type of service or practice to secure that element. And we recommend different frameworks and roadmaps and processes around that. But it's not just doing assessment work. We do a lot of system integration work, go down that kill chain, provide services and offerings around all different elements of that process, and how do we get it into more of an operational model, right? So we have co-source where we come on site and do that, or we do security operations remotely too, where we manage and take over the security operations aspect of it. So just a lot of different elements to this. For time sensitivity, I will kind of keep clicking through it, but this is kind of the framework, and a lot of the time to detect, time to respond, like I was talking about before. How do you triage those tickets? How do you get too many tickets and don't know what they do and what value they provide to your organization, right? So we have a methodology, a process of how we do that, and leveraging a lot of the Microsoft technology, we enable that orchestration or instrumentation of that technology in people's environments. But it really comes down to talent pool issues, challenges. How do you do it? How do you robotically or orchestrate those processes where you can have the more technical people focus on some of the more technical challenges they run into? So as we kind of keep moving on here a little bit, if it will work, just kind of understanding some of the detection across the different kill chains, right? What do you have to kind of accomplish? What are some of the problems you run into? We work with our clients on this. We have a very large reverse engineering team, incident response team. How do we work with different, client organizations? The good thing with EY, our cyber, we're a multinational organization. So the big clients we work with, we don't have limitations on some of the larger organizations. That's where we spend most of our time, is helping those organizations enable the security across all their entire ecosystem. So if it's assessing their organization, trying to understand what the assessment model is, what their maturity is inside their organization, how mature they are, to moving it to design build phases. Do they build or buy? Can they get the people in the area they live in or wherever that post is? And then how do they move it to operations and helping them with the security operations? We actually do. Probably one of our largest emerging businesses that people don't realize is we do a lot of security operations for a lot of big clients, and then really helping, not just dropping tickets over the fence or kind of trying a low-cost commodity type of service. It's this high-level threat, active defense, threat hunting kind of mentality where we work with our guys that kind of do this with our analytics. We actually have some intellectual property we do with analytics that we help our clients to kind of get that visibility into the major threats inside their environment. Kind of goes back to some of the components we already talked about before, so I won't kind of go into all these again, but it's really kind of moving down and through that life cycle and operationalizing this for them. And I don't know if we got a repeat here on the slides, but we will keep going on. But yeah, so the goal here was really to kind of educate you guys. We did recently release a joint offering with Microsoft. The press release went out on Tuesday talking about some 3 unique offerings that we just came together with Microsoft on around security operations, digital environment, secure digital enterprise, and also the active defense and response around incident response, threat intelligence, and how we work with Microsoft on helping clients solve some of their biggest challenges. So That's all I had. I'll kick it over. I think that's really
Yeah.
what we wanted to cover today, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for being here, and Chad, appreciate the time, and I think we've got a really compelling solution to take what we've worked really hard to protect our Azure environment, to partner with EY to then take that and drive that into our customers as well. So if you have any questions after, we'll be around for a little bit, and we'll give you a little time back now. Thank you.
Thank you.